Dear learners, I am Christina Georgy, your academic counselor for the course code BEGAE-182, which is titled English Communication Skills. As per the requests of a few of our learners, I will be recording this session.
So, in our previous session, we discussed the question pattern of this course code BEGA-182 with specific focus on the December 2022 TEE question paper. There we had a close reading on the questions and I also helped you with the relevant and appropriate answers. I helped you with how to go about the examination and also regarding the basic things to take care of. I hope you are clear with the answer writing strategies. Now we will move on to yet another important segment with respect to your BEGE 182 TEE preparation, that is identifying or analyzing the most important units to study. I am very sure that now that you have seen the previous question paper, you have an idea. That is why we discussed the December 2022 paper. We analyzed that most of the practical questions are from block 2 and there would be a letter writing question most probably from block 3 unit 4. Apart from that, the majority of the theoretical questions could come from block 1. There could also be questions from block 3. So in this particular session, we'll go unit by unit and we'll discuss the most important unavoidable question that you need to prepare effectively. In the sense, without studying these questions, it wouldn't be a good idea for you to sit for the TEE. So are you interested? Good. Thank you so much. Yeah. So remember, as part of this course code, you just have 3 blocks. 3 blocks. The first block is regarding communication. Block 1 is titled Understanding Communication. Block 2 is regarding listening and speaking skills. And the last and final block, block 3, is regarding reading and writing skills. This is something that you need to remember. With respect to communication, there are 4 skills that are often into discussion. LSRW. We say LSRW skill set. Listening, speaking, reading and writing. I'm very sure that my BEGG 172 students would be familiar with all these linguistics aspects. It's a paper called Language and Linguistics that a few of the first year students are studying. This is a much easier paper compared to the other. So firstly, let's discuss block 1, Understanding Communication. Here you have 3 units to study. Firstly, let's have a close look at unit 1, the process of communication. So from unit 1, you need to study what communication is. At times, there could be an individual question on what is communication, or else there could be a short question on any of the aspects related to communication, and even as part of that question, you would have to write an introduction to what communication is. For that matter, please make sure that you study what communication is. There is this diagram seen on page number 6. Towards the left side of the diagram, there are certain important aspects you need to remember. Remember the dictionary definition and the positive aspects that communication can inspire, elevate and encourage. At the same time, it can also cause confusion in the minds of the receiver. For that matter, the process of communication is of great importance. Remember, in the process of communication, there is a sender and a receiver involved. The sender encodes the message and through a proper channel, a receiver decodes the message. For example, even here, this is an online platform. I am the sender and my message gets encoded and reaches you through this platform of Google Meet, and you, my listeners, decode my message, and that results in communication. So make sure that you study the process of communication. For that matter, you can also draw this diagram. If you feel like the diagram that you see on page number 7 is not so easy for you to decipher, you can also look into page number 5. There, as part of the unit introduction, there is this color diagram given. Okay, the diagram would actually enhance your answer. Make sure that you wouldn't consume too much of space for a diagram. Please be aware of the answer booklet and its page numbers. Okay, the next aspect, elements of communication, is also important. For a communication to take place, there should be a proper setting, there should be a language which is also known as code, there should be a channel, and there should be two persons, namely the addresser and the addressee. Addresser is the speaker and addressee is the listener. So I told you block 1 is the most important block with respect to the theory questions. Within block 1, I would say unit 1 is the most important unit. That is, every section that you see as part of unit 1 could actually be a question. That is the significance of this particular unit. Even there could be a question on the elements of communication. I am referring to short questions. Okay, so you could expect short questions on the process of communication, elements of communication, and even the role of decoder. That is, when compared to the role of the sender, it is the decoder who has greater importance. That is, unless the decoder deciphers the correct aspect communicated, the communication will not be successful. And next to that, you see a very familiar question: macro functions of communication. See, when we discussed the December 2022 question paper, we saw this question as part of a short note. See, it's the exact same question. You never know, maybe they could repeat this question. Never be under the impression that, oh, this question came for the last year's TE, so I don't have to study. That would be a blunder. You never know, there could be repeated questions. Section 1.3, barriers to communication. So this could either be a short question or an essay. If it is an essay question, you would have to connect to the next unit also. That I'll discuss once we reach the other unit. Here, just understand that there could be some barriers. If you are not familiar with the vocabulary used, you wouldn't identify the correct aspect communicated. Because of your cultural difference or physical environment, communication wouldn't happen. See, if I'm taking an online session and if there is some construction happening beside me, that would certainly result in noise, and that would be a barrier to our communication. Similar is the case with network difficulties. Poor network could actually result in poor audio, and that could also be a hindrance to communication. See, these are the examples that I conveyed for your understanding. Doesn't mean that you should write these examples. No, you need to rely on your study material, prescribed study material, official study material. So it's easy basically, barriers to communication. Now, different types of communication are there. It could be written, oral, or even through gestures. Just keep that in mind. Downward communication, upward communication, horizontal communication. That is, if it is a communication from a superior to a subordinate, that is from higher to lower authority, it would be downward. The opposite would be upward communication. Just need to understand that. So if it is between two people of same level, it is called horizontal or lateral communication. As simple as. There wouldn't be questions on formal communication, informal communication, written and oral communication for. Everybody knows it. Okay, everybody is aware of all these aspects. Nevertheless, you wouldn't lose anything if you study it, and it's very easy and understandable. Okay, so just have an idea. I have seen questions on conversations. So conversation would be part of section 1.6. That is, if you look at page number 15, you could see a section on conversation, and as part of section 1.7 they have mentioned characteristics of conversation. That also maybe you can study, for there are chances for questions. So these would be the most relevant questions from Unit 1. Please make sure that you read the questions that are actually mentioned towards the end of each unit. You never know, at times they ask you the same or similar questions. So once again, let's quickly summarize the most important aspects from Unit 1. I told you Unit 1 is of great importance. Never ever attempt your TE without properly and thoroughly studying Unit 1. In the sense, there could be multiple questions from here and there because it's too much loaded, this particular chapter. Firstly, you need to know what communication is. Secondly, you need to be aware of the process of communication, elements of communication, and functions of communication. For that matter, you need to number them and study, especially the functions of communication. I understand it could be difficult. When you study the different course codes, points there could be similar topics, but make sure that you study them. Yeah. So barriers to communication could be part of an essay question. We will discuss that in course of time. It could also be a short question, you never know. Okay, please be aware of conversation and its characteristics. And these would be the relevant questions. If there is a change in question pattern, maybe they could ask specific questions. For example, they could ask you about turn taking in a conversation, or they could ask you about adjacency pairs in a conversation. So for the last TE, there was not any such short questions. If there is a change in pattern, maybe you should be prepared. That's all. Now shall we move on to Unit 2? Yeah, thank you so much for your responses. So with respect to Unit 2, it is titled The Globalization of Communication, a Global Village. If they ask you a question that could be on the globalization of communication, there is no probability of there being an essay question from Unit 2. If at all you receive a question, it would be a short note question regarding a global village or regarding globalization. That's all. Another important section that you need to focus upon is section 2.5, page number 32. Communication and social change. Maybe they could ask you a question on communication and social change. Similarly, you could also read on language and the new technology, which is section 2.6. Apart from these, I don't see much probability of there being a question. Okay. To summarize the most important aspects in Unit 2, when compared to Units 1 and 3 of Block 1, this is the least important unit, provided you have an understanding of globalization and the concept of global village. You also need to have an idea of communication and social change, and also regarding language and the new technology. Moving on to Unit 3. Unit 3 is titled Verbal and Non-Verbal Communication. Dear learners, please be aware that this is also a very important unit. Apart from Unit 1 of Block 1, you need to be thorough with Unit 3 of Block 1. I assure you that there will never be a question paper without a question from Unit 3 of Block 1. I am referring to your BEGAE-182 question paper. So verbal and non-verbal communication, there could be a question on verbal communication, but the probability is more for them to ask you a question on non-verbal communication. Even when we discussed our previous question paper, December TEE question paper, 2022 TEE question paper, we saw a question on non-verbal communication. Make sure that you mention the advantages of non-verbal communication and a brief mention of all the relevant aspects should be there, even if it is a short question. That is, you need to mention body language and silence, like eye contact, posture, distance, all such things should be actually mentioned. Remember, there could be specific questions on body language. They could even ask you on any particular aspect from it. So this is a block that you need to be thorough with. Even silence and its role in communication, you never know if they would ask you or not. And if you look at page number 48, section 3.4.3, distance, there is this term proxemics. At times we find students being unaware of this term. Actually, this is a term mentioned in your study material. It is called proxemics, and it is associated with American anthropologist Edward T. Hall. Okay, if in case you receive such a question as a short note, make sure that you attempt this question if interested, and you may write all the relevant points. So within this section there is such a question hidden, so I was just trying to help you. Now if you move on to section 3.5, there you see barriers to communication essay question. So you would wonder, where did the essay question appear in the previous TE? There comes the importance of referring to the previous question papers. I told you there could be minor changes in question papers. Hence, you should read your question paper and see the question pattern once you receive the question paper. That is, in the prior TEs, there used to be essay questions from theory part. And the compulsory, or rather, the most repeatedly asked question was regarding the barriers of communication. And there was also a question on the levels of meaning. Okay, so these used to be the most commonly asked essay questions. I understand in the last paper there wasn't a question, but be prepared. Make sure that you prepare an essay question on barriers to communication, because for the June 2022 TEE there was an essay question from theory part, and if I am right, it was a question on this. Okay, so please be prepared. So once again, let me revise the most important aspects from this unit. If you look into page number 40, you could also see a diagram there. Verbal 35%, non-verbal 65%. That could also help you somewhere if you draw that diagram. If you draw diagrams, make sure that you draw the correct ones, or else you don't have to draw. There is no mandatory mention to draw the diagram. Alright? So you need to be aware of the differences between verbal and non-verbal communication. You need to study what non-verbal communication is. You need to have an understanding.